Live from Lhasa, this is a special broadcast of CCTV News inside Tibet. In the coming week, we will bring you up close to what is called the Land of Snows. Well, Tibet, the size of Western Europe, is an autonomous region of China lived by 2.7 million ethnic Tibetans. But Tibet is not some landscape with mountains, caravans, or temples. It is a land shaped by its people. We will bring you stories of the Tibetans, who they are, how they live, what they pray, and where they're heading. And stay with us throughout this week. Well, for Tibetans, the Shoton festival that's tomorrow is second only to their New Year. People get a week off to pray and play. And the word Shoton means yogurt banquet. But these days, it takes on all forms operations. Our reporter Wang Mama has this report.
The search for enlightenment begins here. For 600 years, the Drapa Monastery has been one of the most important in Tibet. This is the first stop for Tibetans to mark Shoton. And this is a time to worship and pray. The Shoton festival dates back to the 11th century. Monks would spend weeks in retreat in summer to protect tiny creatures like ants from being trampled to death. And when they emerged, commoners would give them yogurt. Now, with the passing of time, the tradition has changed, but the name remains. The Buddha exhibition marks the opening of the festival. The ceremony has been a yearly ritual at the Drepon for 2 centuries.
斩佛台周边的山上的这个路面全部已经加宽，弄成这个梯步的，为了便于这个群众的通行和这个群众的疏散道，这一块是全部已经准备完了。然后我们这个折泵室。
Things are pretty quiet here right now. The Tanka of Sakyamuni, one of the biggest in Tibet, is lying in this hall. The monks will chant scriptures and sound the horn to welcome in the big day. And crowds of worshippers, hundreds and thousands of them, will climb up overnight to pray. Up on that platform, a giant painting of the Buddha is revealed once every year. The significance of this ceremony cannot be underestimated. It's a mass expression of the belief of centuries. And now it's showtime. Some 500 farmers and herders from around Lhasa are rehearsing the spectacle. Director Jiang Cuo feels both the honor and pressure to put things together and make sure it remains a Tibetan thing.
This is going to be a state-of-the-art show in Tibet in terms of technology, but the performances are purely traditional.
Tibetan identity is inseparable from their spirit. Shoton is a time to express their devotion, to renew their connection to the past. Wang Mengman, CCTV, Lhasa, Tibet.
And my colleague Wang Mangmang is here with me in the studio to talk more about the prep work of the Shoton Festival. Good morning, Mangmang.
Good morning,
What exactly is the Shoton Festival? Why it is a big deal for Tibetans?
Well, the Shoton Festival for Tibetans, it's religious, it's ceremonial, it's celebratory, it's about family gathering, and it's once a year, so it's a huge thing. Last year, about 220,000 worshippers and tourists were at the Buddha show, and now this year, with the walkway renovated, we'll be expecting a lot more. And we all know that Tibetans don't mind making long and hard journeys to worship their gods. The Drepon Monastery is located on a mountain 5 kilometers from Lhasa, so that's quite a bit walk. Usually it takes a couple of hours, and many worshippers would set out as early as 3 a.m. to get the best view. And the ritual will start at about 7 in the morning, and the monks, about 100 of them, will carry the huge painting of Sakyamuni, about the size of 3 basketball courts, all the way to the platform and pull it up to the top. So that process is going to last about 30 minutes. And after that, the worshippers will present hada, the white silk cloths, to show their devotion. So the atmosphere will be dramatically different from what we've seen in my story. The quietness and emptiness in the monastery is because the monks are so used to this yearly ritual that they don't need to make any special preparations.
I know you're going to set off for the Drepon Monastery tonight, hours before a huge gathering of pilgrims.
Absolutely.
So why there, and what are we going to see?
Well, we have to take a look back at history. Gelugpa is one of the schools of Tibetan Buddhism, and when Gelugpa established its rule over Tibet back in the 17th century, the religious and political center was at the Drepung. It was also the residence for the 5th Dalai Lama, and from there he moved to the Potala Palace after its reconstruction. But the Drepung Monastery remained the principal seat of the Gelugpa and also retained its premier position among the 4 great monasteries. And it's also very significant in terms of scale. Back in the 1930s, it was the biggest monastery in the world and housed about 8,000 monks. But today, there are about 400 and 500 of them. And so that's a little bit about history. Another reason that draw people in at the Drepung Monastery is because it has, as I mentioned in the story, the biggest painting of Sakyamuni in Tibet. So every year after that ritual, the monks would roll it up and store it in the hall where they study and chant and debate their scriptures. So it's based in religious air all year around. And this evening I'll be setting out to the Drepung Monastery, and tomorrow I'll be taking a very close look at it.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Thank you very much, Mama.
Yes.
Well, there has been a lot of changes. Tibet has seen huge changes over the past years. A big renovation project has just been completed in the old town of Lhasa. And according to the local government, the conservation project is aimed at better protecting the traditional urban areas. It means the conservation of historical relics, repair of the old architectures, reconstruction of new buildings, and provision of energy-saving amenities. Our reporter Han Bin is now standing by at Bakur Street, and Han Bin will tell us more about the renovation. Han Bin?
Hi Zoe, it's burning hot here in Lhasa, but here we can get a bird's-eye view from the Bakur Street. And behind me is the well-known Shoton Monastery. It's the World Heritage Site. It sits in the center of the old city area, of which it is about 1.3 square kilometers. At the end of last year, the local government had initiated a massive renovation project aimed to upgrading the infrastructure and the appearance. And those efforts has brought about many changes to the once bustling religious, cultural, and commercial center.
Lhasa's old city area, a holy place in Tibetan Buddhism. For over 1,000 years, Tibetans have lived here around the Shoton Monastery. A new round of government-initiated conservation projects has just been completed. 67-year-old Chemei has lived here since she was born. She remembers that Bakur Street was originally a dirt road with old houses. Back then, there were only a few peddlers.
The new renovation has not affected our religious activities, makes our lives much easier in the old city area.
The city government launched the project last December. 1.5 billion yuan has gone into improving the area's basic infrastructure and appearance. And the traditional Tibetan architectural styles have been preserved.
All of the electrical wires are put underground and the drains were cleared out. The relics are kept away from the hidden dangers of water and fire.
The Tibetan-style street lamps are one of the few new touches. Ever since the 1980s, several renovations have taken place in the old city area. The last one has brought the biggest changes. For example, the central Bakur Street used to be a maze of narrow alleys with irregular electric wiring overhead. It was bustling with businesses. Today, it has a completely new look. All of the vendors have been relocated nearby, leaving more spacious walkways for pilgrims and visitors. Zida is the deputy chief of the conservation project. He says the project will make Bakur a high-end tourist destination while downplaying its commercial function. But most important for the centuries-old pilgrims' route is authenticity.
We have made the efforts to conserve the original appearance of the buildings in the reconstruction. Unnecessary repairs and moves have been avoided.
Chimei says she is grateful for the upgrade of facilities and conditions in her hometown. And as for the true impact of these changes on Lhasa's old city area, perhaps only time can tell.
Well, actually, I've been here many times over the past years, but this time I see the biggest changes. For example, the walkways are getting wider with the newly decorated windows and with the so-called Tibetan-style street lamps. Someone likes the changes, while some others may argue they don't like it because they say pilgrims never mind squeezing along the bustling narrow alleys. But actually, it's very helpful for the tourists to touch upon the Tibetan culture and its people. I think the most important thing is whether the changes can help protect its unique culture and to honor people's beliefs. So, yeah.
Well, as mentioned in your report, Hanbin, the part of the renovation is to improve the living conditions of the Tibetans there. But are the Tibetans living there happy to see what they've got?
Well, I've interviewed many Tibetans. I think most of them are very grateful that the governments bring about water, electricity, and sanitation facilities. But they also want something more. We know a huge sum has been spent on upgrading Lhasa's infrastructure and its outlook and appearance. But local Tibetans also hope that more efforts will go into improving their living conditions, for example, like their interior home renovations, and to provide more living spaces. I think for those requirements, the local government needs to invest more and work more in the future. Back to you, Zoya.
Well, there's obviously a lot to improve. Thank you very much, Hanbin, for your reporting from Baku Street. And tourism grows in Tibet. The question comes to how to maintain the heritage as more and more tourists have come to visit the land of snows. Our reporter Ayang travels to an ancient Tibetan palace and finds out how it is balancing the equation.
At 3,700 meters above sea level, Shoton Prefecture in southern Tibet enjoys a mild climate. It's a major grain-producing region, blessed by history as well as nature.
Shoton Prefecture is the birthplace of Tibetan culture, and it's also one of the richest regions due to its weather conditions and natural resources. And now we're going to Yungbu Lakang. Legend has it, it's the first palace in Tibet.
More than 2,000 years ago, Tibet's first king built his first palace here. Yungbu Lakang is now one of the oldest buildings in Tibet. However, what tourists see now is the palace that was destroyed during the Cultural Revolution and restored again in the 1980s. Today, local authorities protect the relics with much more care.
实际上呢，这个保护这个遗址呢。
The government in recent years has invested more in conservation. This year, Yungbu Lakang has received about 2 to 3 million yuan. The inside of the palace is small and cannot host too many tourists at one time, so we do not encourage them to stay inside long.
Photography is strictly prohibited inside the palace. This rule has largely helped reduce the time people spend inside, allowing devoted Buddhists to cite sutras in peace. Prayer flags inscribed with symbols and mantras have been used for centuries by Tibetans, and now tourists too. Wind will recite the blessings for those faithful believers.
Write down your name and your wishes and hang it somewhere on the top. It is supposed to give you good luck.
The blue prayer flag is the one that goes on top. The narrow road is difficult to climb, but judging from the piles of flags overlooking the palace, tourists as well as locals spare no effort placing their wishes along with the oldest cultural symbol of Tibet. The prayers will give people comfort, but the survival of Yungbu Lakang will, as always, depends on our care and respect. Ayang, CCTV, Shoton Prefecture, Tibet.
Well, that's why people spare no efforts to come and have a look. And that is our special coverage on Tibet for today. Tomorrow will be the Shoton Festival in Lhasa, the most celebrated on the highland. We will bring you reports on how Tibetans observe this most important week before winter. I'm Joey in Lhasa. Now back to my colleague Pan Deng in Beijing. Pan Deng.